we're really excited to see everyone here. It's always tough when we're not able to meet physically, but I'm really glad to see everyone here. And I know we're going to have a lot of great information that's going to be shared today. I know Tarl has a ton of information, a wealth of information he's going to share with us. Luke, do you want to say anything in particular?
Yeah, just thanks again to Tarl and everybody on the call. Appreciate you guys coming out. Sorry that we can't meet in person. Tarl's idea of these breakout Zoom rooms, we're gonna have to look into that because that sounds fun to me. So that's what it's all about, though, is sharing ideas and trying new things out. So appreciate it, Tarl. Thanks for coming on, and take it away, man.
Oh, cool. All right. Yeah. No, Raphael, Luke, thanks for doing this. Thanks for inviting me. It was a random email. I got like, sure, whatever. Like, it makes sense to do these, like you said earlier, when I live in Seattle, Washington, for those of you guys that know, and to fly out to Louisville to do a meetup probably would be like, well, what else we got to do, right? Besides that, like, that would be fun, but what else? And so doing it virtually is one of the benefits so far. So I would apologize for doing these virtually. I mean, you can have a lot of fun with these. And make the most out of it besides meeting in person. So if you figure out how to do the Zoom rooms, which is really easy to do, or breakout rooms, and start engaging. I don't know if you guys all that are listening to this would like to network with other people. Maybe you don't. Maybe you just want to keep your camera off so we can't tell what you're doing, or even if you're paying attention or not. But maybe you want to network with people and engage in real estate still. Up to you. But I think the breakout rooms are kind of a fun thing to do, at least even if it's for 15 minutes or something like that before you have, or even afterwards for people that want to network. But so that said, for those of you guys that don't know me, I'm going to do a PowerPoint for you guys. One of the topics I gave Raphael a number of topics that we can do and what we can specialize in. He chose business scaling, and so in investing in real estate, something that actually is one of my favorite topics. But I want to ask for forgiveness for anybody that's like super brand new to real estate, because this topic can get a little heavy at times, right? Depending on what level of investing you're at and what level in the business you are. And also keep in mind, like, the global economy, the world economy, the real estate economy, the COVID bullshit, all that kind of stuff that's happening in the world today. It's a big like question mark for all of us, but we're doing the best we can for investing. So for some of you guys, you might be wanting to scale back. Some of you guys want to be scale forward, right? So scale up and down. But the thing that I think is really, really important in this business is to have an ability to scale up and down in your business. And I think a lot of people that I've met a lot of investors over the years that have been able to scale up, but they're locked in and they have no capability of ever scaling down without destroying their entire business. And so, and I think that's a challenge, specifically now in our business, is you should be able to scale up, but also be maneuverable in case there's quick economic changes to be able to scale down too. So that's what I want to be able to show you guys today, is to be able to do both. And something that's worked for us for a lot of years. I've had that mistake in the past where I've scaled up and got locked into it with a ton of overhead. And I'll show you guys my story in the PowerPoint a little bit, but I'm a recovering house flipper. I've lived on the West Coast my entire life, and I've flipped a little over 600 properties. So I've done it a lot. And biggest regret of most house flippers out there is they flipped all their properties and they didn't keep any. And I was that person for a lot of years. But I got to a point in my business where my overhead was so high and I had too much going on and too many expenses going out, that I had to flip, that I had to keep flipping in order to keep operating expenses coming in to feed the machine. So that, I think, is a bad position to be in this business, because you're not really investing in real estate if all you're doing is flipping, in my opinion. You're just earning kind of a commission. It's a transactional based situation like a realtor is, or anything like that. Flipping is amazing for generating large capital if you're doing it right. It's also amazing to losing a lot of bunch of money if you're doing it wrong too. So it's also the best part of our business if you want to get pissed off all the time and lose hair and sleep and get angry at contractors and get angry, like not buying enough properties, or you buy too many properties, or having too much lender fees. Like, I just get angry like all the time. So if you're interested in all of that, go start flipping a lot of houses and you will be right there. So I think the wonder world in real estate investing is actually, you're actually invested and you have cash flow, you have properties, you have a balanced portfolio, you have multi, you have single, you have commercial, whatever you're interested in, and you're niched out in that. And then you have that passive cash flow. You build up your asset portfolio. You can leverage it. You can pull against it. You can be able to sell it for equity, 1031 exchange, and do what real investors do over time. And flipping is a tool, right? And it makes you really good, in my opinion, at the other things. So that's my soapbox right now on that topic. And I'm just going to jump into the PowerPoint. Everybody cool? All right.
Yeah.
So let's go. I do cuss, so that's what's gonna happen. Just so you guys know. So let me get my PowerPoint up. The monitor 2. Play from beginning. Good to go. All right, I'm gonna share my screen. Everybody, hold on. Oh, can't do it. You got to give me permission.
I got you. There you go.
Yay. All right, here we go. All right, so for those of you guys that stick around too, right? If we have enough time at the end of this, I'm actually going to show you guys some of my real systems and the and what's actually happening. Oh, I guess I'm the admin now. All right, I'm gonna admitting people in. So I'm also going to show you guys some of our systems on Asana that we use. So I'll talk a little bit about Asana on this PowerPoint. I don't own Asana. It's just a project management software tool. But I kind of like showing people like, this is what we actually do to scale our projects and all that kind of stuff. But this is me, Fixated Real Estate, Tarl at Fixated Events. If you guys actually want to hit me up, that's a real email. This is my Instagram handle. I am starting to get better at it every day. And then this is my company's Facebook stuff. And then if you want to hear my entire story, if you guys are interested, it's episode 189 on BiggerPockets podcast. It's the best episode they ever did. And it's essentially, I got started when I was 20 years old. I bought a seminar for how to wholesale real estate. And I don't know if any of you guys have ever bought a seminar before for real estate, or that's how you got started. Actually, quick question. Actually, Luke, Neil, Raphael, Bridget, one of you guys, did any of you guys buy seminars before? Luke? All right. Bridget, no. No, Luke, you're the only one. You're the only one like me. So, I don't know. A lot of people get started in real estate because they buy a seminar, but that's interesting. Usually, a lot of people are like, "Yep." In Seattle, there's a ton of people that bought fortune builders and stuff, but I bought a wholesale seminar called "How to Turn $10 into $10,000 in 30 days or less," and I'm like, I got $10, I'm in, right? And I was 20 years old. I was a broke college student, and actually, right after I bought this program, I dropped out of college. So, but long story short, it didn't take me 30 days to make 10 grand. It took me a little bit longer than that, right? But essentially, if you want to hear the whole chaotic story, it's in that episode. But it got me started in real estate through wholesaling property, assigning contracts. And then I got out of it for a long time because I hated it. I absolutely hated it. And one of the things you'll find with my story is that I hate real estate still. I don't even like real estate that much at all. Real estate's a lifestyle thing for me. And it allows me to do what I love to do, which is travel, have fun, free time, meet people like you guys, that kind of stuff. So this is my awesome team. This is my wife here. We just had our firstborn child, Jax, J-A-X. He is exactly 2 weeks, 15 days. He's 15 days old now. And so she is taking care of him. She's actually normally full-time in the business with me. This is super duper awesome Serena, and that's Nate. This is my core team. We have a little over 20 other people that are involved in our business in some capacity, most of them independent contractors, or they work with our event side of what we do. But this is my team, period. Everybody else is expendable except for these 4 people. They've been with me the longest. Nate runs acquisitions. Serena runs a lot of our operations and design, like any of the pretty houses that you might see us do. She designs most of those. Grace runs the project property management, and she's also my partner in our meetups and our events that we do. And then I do fun stuff. So started Fixated Real Estate in 2014, but I did get started full-time in 2012 officially as far as full-time investing in real estate. But I actually got introduced to real estate in 2005 when I was 20 and bought that seminar. And I did that for about a year until the end of till roughly mid 2006, and then left before the market crashed, right? Not on purpose, but I just hated it. So I got out. In between 2015 and 17, Fixated, we did 97 flips in full turn fix and flips in Seattle, Portland markets. Those are specifically like $60,000+ rehab properties, right? So any from an acquisition of like 110 grand all the way up to $1 million+ as far as acquisition price for single family homes. And the majority of those rehabs averaged between $60,000 and $80,000 in rehab costs per property. So they're big rehabs. We didn't do cosmetics during that time period. We still don't. We get lucky. We find a cosmetic flip. It's almost all like studs out, ready to go. 50 million properties in the last 3.5 years, flipped 600 since 2012. Long story on that, maybe another day. But 2 years ago, my wife and I were like, what the fuck are we doing with our lives? We're working our asses off and we're not enjoying ourselves. We're making a large income, but we're not really like living the lifestyle we really want. And we didn't have that many rentals. I think we had like 3 at that time. And so we'd flipped a ton. We only had 3 rentals. She wasn't full-time in the business. It was my business. She had a full-time job. She loved to death. And at the end of 2017, we came to like a moment where like something's got to change, or I'm totally leaving real estate forever. So she quit her job, came on full time, and we decided to travel, right? We changed our entire business focus to the BRRRR strategy: buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. We still flip, right? Opportunistically, but we keep as much as we can, and we scaled down our business so we can live our lifestyle, because we were never doing this business so I can sit there and have like 100 employees and like scale all across the US. I was never motivated by that. I was motivated about being able to like travel all the time, have a ton of fun, meet cool people, right? And never ever worry about money. My entire focus was always never to be broke. That's different than wanting to be wealthy. So I also, at the 2017, I was like, my entire motivation was just never to be broke. So I was making lots of income, but I wasn't making lots of wealth. So I hope you guys understand the difference there, but there's a big difference mentally there. So came through that. We then spent 2018, 2019, we traveled 229 days together. We've spent every single day together since she quit her job. And except for a 3-week period, she went on a cruise with her mom throughout Europe in 2018. But outside of that, we've been together every single day and we love it. We're one of those weird couples that actually enjoy each other's, like, what's it called? Each other's, whatever. We like being together. We love being together. There you go. Okay. So through all that, these are my 4 main businesses, and I'm done with the preamble. Fixate Real Estate's our investment company. This is our meetup business that we do locally for the Pacific Northwest area. This is the largest real estate conference on the West Coast that we host for 4 years. And it's now become the virtual Big Badass Real Estate Wealth Expo because we had to. And sorry, Raphael and Luke, but I'm going to plug that really fast. So just because. So if you guys are interested in tickets and stuff, it is September 18, 19. It is with BiggerPockets. We're doing a lot of stuff with them. Brandon Turner will be there. A whole bunch of other people on BiggerPockets will be there. It is real networking. We got 40 plus investor presentations. You guys can actually do this with other people, right? We don't have to host it. It's cool. We have a whole community board that you guys jump on. And if you want to set up your own virtual meetups where you're virtually talking to other people like this, you can do that as much as you want. You want to do something with Louisville, you can do that through our network with 1,000 plus people. That'll be part of this entire group and stuff as well. You can meet exhibitors. You can do all, it's very interactive. And we've spent a lot of money on software to be able to do that so that you guys can be a part of that too. You also get all the recordings. It is $149 a ticket. Just go to badassexpo.com and you guys can learn more there. You get all the recordings. There's raffle prizes, exhibitors. It's a big event virtually, right? Sucks that we got to do it virtually, but because normally it's in person. All right, enough about that. So the rest of this, though, guys, is all about Raphael. You have 2 people in your waiting room. I don't know if that matters or not.
You go ahead and admit them real quick. I think what happened initially was that I had to make you host because for some reason it wasn't letting me allow you to share. So I think it was just settings on my part. So if you go ahead, just admit them, and then you should be for now.
No big deal. All right, so everything on my business is about screw ups. We screw up a lot of stuff. We have screwed up a lot of stuff, and I just want to show you guys some of my screw ups, just because like everything I'm going to show you is because we screwed it up, right? It's, you know, I would love one day to do a whole panel just to be a bitch fest about all the mess ups that people have. Like, it's a lot of fun in real estate investing to talk about war stories about like what you messed up, what you didn't, so you can kind of compare like how badly you screwed yourself up in your business compared to other investors. It's actually kind of fun, or it's terrifying. It just depends on who you are. But it's going to happen in this business. We're all going to mess something up. And the big thing for us is just learning from it as much as possible and not repeating the same mistakes over and over and over again. And eventually, if you're documenting it correctly, you'll start avoiding these mishaps and start building a system out. Or you learn from other people and their screw ups and mishaps, so that way you don't have to do the same thing that they did. Right. So in this case, I'm going to go through this fast. Some of you guys might have seen this. If you've seen a past video from me on YouTube with BiggerPockets, but I've had contractors skip town on me with deposits. The biggest one we've had skip town was $30,000 deposit. It was a $60,000 contract, and I used to give 50% deposits. Right. So this is when I was brand new to real estate investing and so forth. So if you give a 50% deposit to a general contractor for 60 grand, right, and they skip out and they just bounce out forever, then unless you could find them and sue them in some way, then you're shit out of luck, right? So on a lot of levels. So that happened to us. Do you guys think I give out 50% deposits anymore? Hell no, right? Not at all. Never, ever. So I'm never gonna do that. We have a whole new process for that, and it's really hardcore. We've also been red tagged. You guys have to get permits in Louisville? Right? Anybody do permits for everything, right, that you're supposed to do? Of course you do. Absolutely. You always get permits. So but I've been red tagged on properties and multiple times, and eventually you get to the point. This is what a red tag looks like in Tacoma, by the way. Eventually you get to the point to where you actually start permitting your properties like you're supposed to, so you stop getting delays on your projects. I'm not saying, I don't care what I'll say. I'm not saying we do it on every single thing, because there's some stuff that's just dumb that you have to get permitted, but we do it pretty consistently. There you go. I'll say that. And shut down LNI. LNI here is Labor and Industries. I don't know if that has, if they're ones that like basically enforce labor laws in the state of Washington. Also, they run all the construction laws in Washington. I don't know what's like in Kentucky, but in Washington, Washington's really dumb in a lot of ways. I'm just going to throw that out there. They had a law in the state of Washington that in order to flip a house, you had to be a general contractor. They had a law like that for a lot of years, and you had to get your general contractor's license. Now, how do you get your general contractor's license in the state of Washington? You fill out a 20-minute application. You give them $115, get an insurance and a bond, wait 30 minutes, and you're a general contractor. So that's how you get your license in the state of Washington. Zero testing whatsoever, right? It's a total shakedown, so that, you know, it's completely ridiculous, right? So LNI would do that. So they'd show up to projects and they'd be like, you flipping this house? Yeah. Like, do you have your license? No. You shut down, right? So like that kind of thing. But you hire a general contractor. How dumb is that? You'd hire a general contractor. So nowadays Washington's different. You can hire a general contractor and you can flip a house. That's all good. But LNI sometimes just rolls up and starts like waving their badge. They're pretty dumb. So this is also what it looks like to get shut down when you have an asbestos hazard on a property. That's been one of ours. That's a really long story. We were not environmentally bad people. It's a really long story. We actually had an asbestos abatement company show up to abate a house for us, but the day before that happened, our window company showed up and early and replaced all the windows and ripped out some of the asbestos siding that was there, left it on the ground because they just thought it was normal siding, and they were jerks and they didn't clean it up. And the abatement company shows up, was like, oh my God, this is horrible. And they called like the state of Washington on us and had the EPA out there and the state of Washington LNI. And it was like a biohazard event. Like, we were, if you guys ever seen Captain Planet or something back when I was a kid, we were like the evil villain of Captain Planet or something. But it was so ridiculous what happened. But all because it doesn't matter. Long story. We got through it. We did the right thing and we still got in trouble. Screw on LNI. All right. So we've had 3 years work up. I'm not gonna talk about LNI anymore. All right. But the fact of the matter is, the bigger you become in a state, this probably happens in Kentucky too, or in Louisville, the bigger you become in whatever you're doing, the bigger target that gets on your back as well, right? And there's some people that just want to knock people down just because you just have a bigger target. That's all it is. And so that happened to us a couple of times. And so now we got better at like not being a bigger target. So this one sucked. We once walked into one of our houses, found it fully gutted when the week before it was almost finished. So we were like, cabinets up, tile up, everything's going to good, granite's in, flooring's in. We're like, oh, this house will be done in a week. Show up the next week, house is gutted to the studs, right? All the way down to it. What? Yeah, I know you were saying, right? So the short version of that, the GC, there was a leak on the roof, small leak on the roof. The general contractor on that project called ServPro. I don't know if they have ServPro in Kentucky, but they call ServPro, say there's a water issue here and it's got mildew and everything like that. We need to gut all the sheetrock out of this place and remove everything so we can mitigate it. The GC then had the nerve to hit us up, say to file a homeowner's insurance claim on it, get the insurance, and then give him the check to go fix everything again. So we sued the shit out of that guy and won. Now, part of how we won, though, is because of one of the things we do in our systems with this pictures, right? Which I'll show you later how we do it. We take photos every single week of every project, no matter whether it's sitting there or not sitting there or whatever. It doesn't matter what the hell is going on with it. We take about roughly between 80 to 120 photos of every single project once a week. And that's very easy to do. You could do that with 700 square foot house really fast. You just walk around with your phone, click, 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 click. And then it just goes into Dropbox and it's just stored with a date. And that's it. Just once a week, we do that. So we had a lot of documentation to be able to show the court being like, this guy screwed us all. So we won. Taking longer than 12 months to fix to do a flip, which sucks. We get a lot of wet basements here. So this is a fully finished basement that you show up the day of listing it and it has water in it. This is a basement that, if you notice, this is a brand new sheetrock, brand new electrical. We fully reframed this property. Basement starts leaking, right? We get a lot of water in Seattle. It's called hydrostatic pressure for us. It's not that water's coming down, it's water's rising up, right, from the ground. And that happens on some of our properties. So you have to do these interior French drain situations. This is all brand new. This was a 3,800 square foot remodel house that we spent like a little over $1 million. Yeah, it doesn't matter, but this sucks when you get to this point, you think you're done and you don't have a dry basement. This one, we bought a short sale. So if you guys ever had a short sale, sometimes they get tied up for 6 months before you buy it. So when we looked at it and tied it up, it had a dry basement. Then it got tied up for 6 months. We closed on it. We never went back to re-inspect the property right beforehand. Well, it had a sub pump in the basement that the power had been turned off for months. So the basement just filled up with water, and it became, I think there was about almost 3 feet of water in the bottom of that basement. And we found, this is like the day after we close and we show up. We're like, shit. All right. So what? So water, whatever. This is what an interior French drain looks like, by the way, if you guys are ever curious, if you need to do them. I don't know if you guys got to do them, but we got to do them. So now what do I do now? When we have a basement in Seattle, am I buying it in the summer? Or if I buy it in the winter? Those are two big questions marks. If I'm buying it in the winter, then we're like, we usually know if there's water. If we're buying it in the summer, we got to look for a lot of like stuff to figure out if there's water in there in the winter. We had sewer issues. We used to never do things called sewer scopes. This is what a $12,000 sewer fix looks like, because this is the sidewalk and you have to go down. It's on a hill. You had to go down 18 feet to get to the sewer break. And it was stupid stuff. This happened after we went to sell the property because we never did a sewer scope before we bought the property. Now we do sewer scopes on everything. And if you don't know what a sewer scope is, it's just you get the sewer inspected for breaks before you buy it. We passed on private properties. We've had lots of contractor screw ups. These are some of my favorite contractor screw ups ever. This is a toilet that once it got installed, you can't close the door, right? That's a great one. I still remember that property. That was like in 2015, if I remember correctly. So now we measure shit out before we, install things. And this is a torch down roof and a shingled roof. And the contractor set the house on fire. Luckily it got stopped, but beforehand, but we didn't find out because there's a contractor in the house, different contractors like, the house is on fire inside, right? And you find that out from the outside that the roofer set it on fire. This is one of my absolute favorite retarded ones, which is where the contractor, this was plumbing. So this is a vanity and this is a toilet. This is the water lines and also the drain line. This is the water and drain line for the vanity. This is the water line for the toilet. So they had it cut out like a full-on rectangle. And then you go, okay, just box around that with some sheetrock, right? So you can close it up. So we had a handyman come in there because the drywaller had already left. We just say, hey, just box out the plumbing so that you can close out, you can box it out with sheetrock, right? Well, they literally took that. Boxing out means just like you just basically like go around the actual plumbing and so forth, like you're supposed to with the sheetrock. Instead, they actually boxed out the plumbing. Like they had to put wood framing in there. So this is, anyways, it's ridiculous. This was my very first flip in Washington when I realized that general contractors suck here because, like I said earlier, it takes you 30 minutes to get a GC license here. I learned a lot from that. And this is a furnace that due to in selling the property, during inspection, the furnace came out bad. So we said, yeah, we'll replace the furnace for the buyer. And we get a furnace guy in there. The furnace was originally in this closet. This is a closet. And this is now perpendicular to where it was. So the furnace used to be like this in the closet. So you wouldn't be able to see it. Instead, they put it perpendicular to go out this way at a 90 degree to where you can't even close this bathroom door because the handle hits the furnace now, right? And it's sticking out into the hallway and you can't close the freaking, and he took off the closet doors to install the furnace, right? Whereas if you just turned it the other way, it'd be good. So this is the picture I get from the buyer's agent. And they're like, hey, the furnace works great, but we have a problem. So I've never I got this photo in 2012, I think it was. And I've never gotten rid of it just because it just reminds me never to trust contractors. So missed designs. This is the last thing. It's kind of a fun one. I did this myself, right? So this is a casement window and it's for egress. The casement window opens out, right? It's like a crank. And so it's a big enough size for egress because it's a below grade bedroom. Well, the concrete contractor was like building a new driveway. And they're like, hey, just take some orange paint and put it where you want it. For the driveway at the end. I'm like, oh, cool, I'll do that. No big deal. Well, I put the orange paint right here because it looked pretty good. And then he puts the concrete exactly where I put it. And you can't open up the window, right? My bad. So, yeah, of course I could say, hey, come on, you should have known that. But, I'm the one that painted the damn line. So this was our fault too. This is a good one. Notice brand new plumbing, brand new sheetrock, brand new bathroom. This is the door frame right here. We actually jutted out the door for whatever reason. We just had it have this little nook, and we had the vanity up against it. And it wasn't until we installed the vanity that we realized you can't open the vanity because it hits the door frame, right? And I mean, like, this is a good 4 or 5 inches of just a weird nook that we just had in this the bathroom we built, right? And we didn't figure that out until after all the plumbing and all the electrical and everything was already in there. So we had to then remove all the plumbing, remove the electrical, and shift it over, put it all back. This is that finish. So we should have caught that really long time ago, but we didn't. So we make mistakes. What else we got? That's it. All right. So I got a lot more mistakes. So if you guys want to keep going on those, I can show you a lot of stuff. So the lesson of all that, though, is, oh, wait, forgot Tim Ferriss. What you choose to work on is far more important than how hard you work. So ultimately, what I usually say, I don't know if I have this in this slide, is that the lesson is that you're going to screw shit up, right? And part of how we built all of our business and our systems is through those screw ups. Each one of those screw ups is now recorded. There's a document of some fashion. There's a check and balance process. There's something that makes it to where we don't repeat that again, right? As best as possible. But I'm the type of person, if you work with me on my team, you're going to screw something up. I'm going to screw a lot of stuff up. I'm okay with that. It's if you keep repeating it, that's where I'm not okay. Especially if it's the same thing. So let's create a process for it, document it, and then move on, and then learn from it so we can grow, right? And sometimes you can't learn from it because sometimes it's an act of God or whatever, but most of the time it's your own fault. So so this is to simplify things, and this is what we're going to dive into now for the scale stuff. Is, real estate to me is really just 3 things. It's people, numbers, pieces of paper. That's it. And I focus mainly in my business on the people side. That's my skill set, is the people, and then numbers and pieces of paper. So you need people to do this business, and this is investing. So you need people to do it. You need sellers, you need buyers, you need tenants, you need contractors, you need escrow, you need, or I don't know if you guys are you guys an attorney state or escrow state for transaction for closing properties? Do you guys use escrow or attorneys?
Attorneys mainly, but you can use escrow, I believe, as well. There's some escrow companies.
Yeah, we're in an escrow state. I mean, you can use attorneys, but the standard here is escrow. So
right.
I just got to remember that. All right. So but you need all stuff. Numbers, it's math. This business is math. That's what it is. And so if you get the emotion out of everything, this is a numbers math equation. You're investing in real estate. It's not a piece of artwork that you're trying to create here. You're not going to live in the property most of the time. So there's things that if you're truly investing in it, it is non-emotional, right? It's a numbers business that you're either playing with your money in it, which you're welcome to, but when you're investing other people's money, if you've raised capital, then it definitely needs to be non-emotional, and you have to actually, protect those people's money. So, but it's numbers and it's pieces of paper, which is contracts. And even pieces of paper is becoming null and void these days, because there's a lot of ways you can do electronic closings these days. They still got to notarize some shit, but most of the time that is becoming less and less and less. So if you just focus on those 3 things, I think the rest of business is easy. So ask this question: does more houses equal more money? Yes or no? What do you mean no? Why would it be a no? Anybody want to jump in?
I was thinking it was a no, maybe because sometimes your profit margins might be smaller if you have more, or you might have to bring on partners that are going to then take out. So it might not be more money for you, is what I was thinking.
I guess in that case, it's a maybe. So it could absolutely mean a hell of a lot more money with more houses, but it also could mean that you've gone bankrupt and you lose your ass too. So it goes both ways. So it's a maybe, right? Yeah. So but there's a nomenclature. I mean, there's a nuance out there that people think like, oh, more is better, right? So the reality is that more doesn't always mean better. More can actually mean a worse situation. We see this like when we did a lot of business in Arizona, or actually Florida was a great example. When we did a lot of business in Florida years ago, I had one general contractor that ran 38 projects for us at one time. So that guy had a business. Actually, it was female owned. She had a great business, right? And she knew how to scale and run a business. I could throw in her 2 more houses, 3 more houses. She would have figured it out. Now there were smaller scale houses, whatever, right? In Washington, I have a lot of great contractors that can do 2, maybe 3 max houses at a time. Now they're larger scale houses, but 2, maybe 3. I have a lot of great guys that are amazing at 1. You give them 2, they're okay. 3, they screw up all 3 at the same time, right? And that's because of scalability and business practices. This is the same for investors. When it comes to flips, yeah, I know a lot of people that flip houses that can do 1 or 2 at a time and do a great job. But as soon as you give them 3 or 4 or 5 at a time, it all falls apart. All of them, every one of them. You start adding more into that and so forth. There's a point in your system where it breaks, right? And what's your breaking point, right, in your business for your scalability? So for us in 2017, we reached our breaking point, right? We had bought too many big scale houses, right? So larger projects. We were really good at that, like 40, 50, 60, $80,000 rehab level, like really, really good at that. But then we started buying 200,000, 250, 300,000, $400,000 rehabs and thinking it's the same as the 50, 60, 70, $80,000 rehabs. And we're doing the same amount of volume, which we at any time in 2017, we had 17 to 18 active single family rehab projects going on at any time, with a variety of, like, with the low end $40,000 rehab all the way up to the 300 plus $400,000 rehabs. And we thought we were unbreakable, but we weren't. We were breakable, right? And so we'd hit a point to where we would actually start losing money, right? And what really hit me in 2016, we did a lot of houses, right? But I did more projects in 2017 than I did in 2016, but I made the same amount of money personally, right? Because we had operating expenses went up, more capital went out. We had longer holding times because of the bigger projects. Because we had too many projects, we had to let some sit and not ever work on them because we didn't have enough contractors. Because like I've mentioned more than once, contractors suck over here. So we sometimes would have to buy a house and sit on it for 2 or 3 months because we didn't have anybody to have work on it, right? Because we had 2 minutes, but we had to buy the house because we couldn't pass on it. So we had these issues going on. And at the end of the year, I had more gray hair, right? And more stress in 2017 and more overhead, right? And yes, my business technically revenued a hell of a lot more money, but it netted and I made the same amount of money as I did the previous year with less stress. So it was a big wake-up call for me to realize more is not always better if your systems are not ready for that, okay? So big wake-up call there. So more houses does not always equal more money. Better systems mean that. So better systems equals profit, systems equal freedom. It's what it is. Now, if your system is you by yourself, that's a system. That's great, right? And or it could just be a process. So something that you also, when you're starting to stress test your business, is if you took yourself, if you think, oh, I got a great system, it's a great process, everything like that, that's good. If you remove yourself from that process, right, and the whole thing completely falls apart, even if you add the people in it, then it's not a system. The system works because it doesn't matter who's in it. If they're trained on it, it should work, right? It should only work because you're the magic person that can make it all happen, right? And so that means it's like character-based, it's individual-based, it's talent-based, your talent, or you're the bottleneck on a lot of stuff, right? And so, and that's the big thing that we'll talk to you, like where your bottlenecks are in your business. For me, my bottleneck for a long time was on our accounting version, on our accounting process. I hated our accounting. I did our accounting every single week when I had bookkeepers, I had all the QuickBooks, I had everything set up, but yet it always sucks and it was always on me and a stress. Well, we hired a CFO consultant one year and he said, Tarl, you're the issue. You're the bottleneck. You're the reason why all this sucks, right? It's you. And I'm like, okay, what do I do? He's like, get out of it. I'm like, how do I do that? So then they showed me how to do it. But it's because I wouldn't let go of like this one process. I was the bottleneck in the entire business. So for our accounting process, as soon as I removed myself and I let them create a new process, it is so easy, like so easy. I don't have to do really anything at all. I do sometimes I sign checks, but even then you can create a process where you don't even need to sign checks. There's cool software out there. One is called build.com, by the way. Like literally there's a point where I would just like send an email and that email would trigger a series of events for a VA and my bookkeeper to do some stuff. And eventually it would go full cycle back to where I get a message on bill.com to say, do you approve this invoice? Yes or no? And I'd swipe right. Bill.com would mail the check, categorize it back into my QuickBooks themselves. And my bookkeeper, who was part-time, would just go in there once a week and make sure that it got filed correctly in the right property. All I had to do was swipe one email and swipe, right? When for years I was like chaos. It was sucked, right? So getting at what's your bottleneck in your business, right? When it comes to that, for me, it was me. I was bottleneck, right? And I have a lot of stories like that. So I'm gonna, for time's sake, I'm gonna do my best. You guys got me on a ton of caffeine. I just had a kid. I got a 15-day-old kid right now, and I did a webinar for BiggerPockets in my company at 12 earlier today, or sorry, on Pacific time about multifamily. So this is my second one. So I'm like loaded, just so you guys know. So if I start talking fast, forgive me. It's just what's happening. All right, so back to the to real estate. Ultimately, another way to simplify it is there's really only 3 things you need in real estate ever, and that's money, time, expertise. So you have to have all 3 of those in a transaction, right? And in a deal in some way. The key though is that you don't need to be the one that has all 3 of those things. But in order to be successful at real estate investing, you have to have all three of those things. Somebody has to have time to actually work on it. Somebody has to actually fund stuff, and you need money. And then somebody has to have the expertise to make the deal happen, right? Now, the key to this business is that, like, I'm not all three, right? We can do all three in a deal, right? But in order to run our business and grow it, I can't be all three. Now, what are one of the things that would be, what's standard in real estate? You guys could type this in the chat box too if you want. But what's a standard thing that most real estate investors outsource out of those three things? Time, money, expertise. A very common thing that we love to do, we love to leverage. What's one of the three things that we can outsource right away? I got time. Raphael put time in. Time. All right, I'm just gonna say it's money, right? How many people actually use all their own money all the time? What are lenders for, right? What are lenders for? Private capital. If you're buying all your properties with your own cash all the time, you're limited to how many you can buy, right? So you're always going to leverage in some capacity. So that's an easy one. And so it's either with a lender or a private investor or syndication or private money or whatever, or all of them in the same deal, right? So leveraging it out. That's how I got started. I had lots of time. I had expertise when I went full time, right? But even then, I only had expertise in certain things, right? And I get other people, and I had no money that I could buy a bunch of properties with. So I found some other group that had a bunch of money, and then they worked with me and partnered with me, and I leveraged their money to go buy properties, right? We had a partnership with a little hedge fund in Arizona that we had developed, and they funded everything. Now, I didn't get that much of the percentage at first. Just so you guys know, at one point I was doing a deal for 20% of the equity back when I was first starting it out. And I mean, I'd find the property, fix it up with hiring contractors, everything. And at the end of the day, I was only getting 20% of the profit. Now that only lasted 6 months until I realized I was an idiot. And then I started doing something different, right? But you could figure it out, right? Nowadays, you can probably borrow money at 8, 9, 10% interest rate from hard money lenders. You can borrow that from private money people too. We buy a lot of projects and we put none of our own money into them if we can avoid it, right? Time, same thing. If you have lots of time and you're newer, then go partner with somebody that has the expertise and find another person to leverage the money, where you can maybe help work on the project management, or you can help find deals, or you can bird dog, or you can wholesale, or do something, right? So pick one of those things to focus on if you want, or eventually become all three to transact your deal. So what are some of the reasons why people don't have systems in their business is always the big question. It always plagues me, like, why don't people have systems? I know business owners that own great companies. I'm sorry for everybody that keeps not getting admitted in here. Sorry. That own great companies, like 50 employees. Like one of the people that we hang out with, they have 42, 43 employees in a tech startup, right? And he's the CEO, started it up himself, raised the capital, has to run this whole thing together. He does a great job at it. But for some reason, as soon as he gets into real estate, it's like, forget all the business. It's completely different for him for some reason. And he doesn't outsource anything. It's all DIY. Right? It's all do it yourself, right? He has no real systems for it because it's real estate. And there's something weird about this tangible house that, like, people just don't build real systems for you, because maybe it's emotional because we live in it. I don't know. Like, I haven't been able to figure out why people don't do it, but it happens to everybody. Like, it's weird. So another reason why people might not have systems is because they don't have the time to do it. They've maybe dug themselves into a trench too much. They've gone too forward too fast. And then to be able to stop and take the time to be able to refine their systems to go backwards would just take too much time to do. And so they just got to keep going forward. Right? I have a really good friend out of Sacramento that does about 100 flips a year, and he is buried in them, like buried in them. And he just can't get out of them, because if he stops, the machine stops and his overhead catches up. Make sense, everybody? So that's a bad situation to be in. Anyways, this is what most people's systems look like. This is what mine looked like for a little bit. And this is what most people look at. It's like they have stuff, they have processes, they have spreadsheets, they have things going on, right? And at the end of the day, they hopefully turn a profit, but they don't know how they did it, right? That's how most of us do. So I'm gonna go through this fast. I didn't realize how much time I'm going through, but these are some reasons why people screw this stuff up. Shiny object syndrome. You don't have any support around you. You grow too fast, too much too fast. You go out alone. You don't have any team members, and you could nowadays with Upwork. And other ways to hire VAs. There's a lot of ways to get team members for really cheap and affordable. Poor leadership and delegation is an issue. Not knowing where you are now, not being willing to accept where you are now in your business is really hard to do. You can't really draw a map out for your business if you don't know where you are. So where do you start? figure out what your outcome wants to be. Our outcome in 2017 was that we wanted to have way more free time. My wife and I needed to be able to run our entire business from our phone. If we couldn't run our business from the phone, including the apps, the software, everything we use, we weren't doing it. It has to be able to be run from my phone. Nowadays, I could drop this thing, destroy it, and with the cloud, I could pick up any phone as long as I have like access to the cloud and upload everything into it and get my business up and running, right? So it's all on here. So software is awesome. So you can do that. So I wanted that as an outcome, right? I wanted to be able to have rental properties. I wanted to be able to have I never wanted to go to the properties ever again, right? So these are all things that were my outcome, more important to me than the income. That's me. It was more important for me to have the freedom than it was to have a big ass like annual tax return, right? Showing up where I'm getting taxed as a huge active income. So it was way more important for me to have freedom, choices, options, all that stuff, and have other people start running the business. So I want you to keep that in mind. When I go through some of these processes, it's not that other people, it's not that you don't do certain things, it's that you aren't the one that should be doing them, right? If you could scale up. That's how I built it. We have a lot of shit going on in our business, but the key is I'm not the one doing it, right? That's the key. That's what I'm trying to show, okay? So know what you want to work on. If you want to work on where you want 100 houses a year and you want to grow and scale and you love to be active in it and you want to focus on the project management, whatever you love to do that, right? That's the point. If you hate it, why do it? So, all right. So these are 3 great books. They've changed my life, my entire business. If you read all 3 of these, this is my business. Like this is everything that I focus on, or what's in these 3 books. The One Thing by Gary Keller. What is the most important thing that you can be doing today to be able to help your business? What's the most important thing that you do that makes everything else obsolete? For me, it's networking, right? That's my biggest thing. Like I'm really good at finding people, networking with people, building relationships. And that's my superpower, that if I'm able to do that for my business, everything else works, right? For it. And other people could handle the rest. And so I'm also really good at the numbers part. So I play with that too. But 4-hour work week's great for thinking differently, to systematize and optimize and have VAs and other people to be able to do stuff for you. And then the checklist manifesto, you'll see when I show you guys my Asana later, it is checklist manifesto, right? It's how to simplify the hell out of checklists. A buddy of mine, Steve Rosenberg, he does a lot of stuff for BiggerPockets. He used to own a property management company that had about 1,000 doors. And he would explain that his business partner made like this 17-page move out checklist to be able to move out a tenant, right? 17 pages to move out a tenant with all these things. And Steve is a full-time airline pilot at the same time. And he's like, the worst thing that could ever happen on an airline when you is for a pilot is when you're taking off and an engine goes out when you're going off the runway. That's the absolute worst thing that can happen to you as an airline pilot. The checklist to be able to do that is 3 pages to solve that solution. So he's like, business partner, you have 17 pages to move out a tenant. We have 3 pages to shut down a burning engine and save everybody's lives, right? So there's got to be a simpler way to simplify it. So the checklist manifesto is a great book to help you take that, like what you think is a complicated big checklist, and condense it down to like 2 or 3 or 4 things, so that you can make it transferable to others, right? So that's a great, it's actually a really good read too. It's about the healthcare industry. It's kind of fun. So the next thing you do is that, which something I like to do, is write out every single thing that you need to do in your business. Write out everything, every little thing that you do in your business now that you believe you have to do in your business now. Then after you've done all that, spend some time and seriously look at it and go, put a star next to anything that truly you have to be the one that does it. You have to be the person that does it. That not just do it, but also that you have to be the one that makes a decision on that task, whatever that is. Anything that you don't put stars on means you can outsource it. I'd also go through it more thoroughly, because there's probably a lot of stuff you might put stars on that you're lying to yourself that you can actually have other people still do, but maybe you don't want to let go of it, right? I didn't want to let go of the bookkeeping, but somebody else was able to do it, right? I didn't want to let go of making decisions to buy a property, yes or no, right? But somebody else can still do it, right? So those things, and there's some things you might not want to let go, right? But figure that out. You'll be surprised at how quickly that you only maybe have 2 or 3 or 4 things you actually have to do. So this is a standard investment process for most people buying properties. There's a marketing and acquisition phase, however that might be. They analyze the property, they find a way to fund it and purchase it. Then they got to plan the property out. They might do the planning before the purchase, but either one, it's interchangeable. You get contractors going, you do the rehab itself, you get some bookkeeping involved, you list, refi, rent, whatever your disposition is, and you finish it up, right? This is a typical flip or value add, whatever. This is a typical process with 9 steps involved. So this is, if you're looking at this process, I go, okay, well, the question would be is like, how do you make that process even simpler, right? Use checklist manifesto, all that great stuff, some processes. And we spent some time as a team for years with those 9 steps. Like we had those 9 steps and it was just super thorough, super detailed, and it was too much. We're like, well, what are our biggest bottlenecks? What are our biggest things that if we did and we focused heavy on, how do we simplify the hell out of this to where we only have a few things that we are in charge of and the rest of it could be outsourced out? And what it boiled down to for us is these 4 steps. We found that it was way more important for us to analyze the deal thoroughly and do it in such a way that we have all the information we need as much as possible to be able to flow with the rest of the process, right? So we broke it down, and I'll show you guys what that looks like later. We broke it down, and this is for single family, but you can also adapt it to multifamily, whatever, it doesn't matter. But we spent, so this is literally the 4 things that we do, right? We have a property walk analysis process. So a deal shows up, however it shows up, we have to follow this very specific process when we analyze the deal and we walk it in some way or somebody's walking it. There's check boxes, there's documents that have to be taken care of, and you can do our whole process in like an hour and a half if somebody is like really on it, right? But sometimes you get days to do it, so it could take time. Then we have our planning phase, rehab phase, disposition phase. Out of the 4 things, the thing that we found that if we spent all our time on and forgot the rest, everything would be so much easier for the project. And that's the planning phase. For us, we spend probably 70% of the entire project time in the planning phase now today, right? So I'm only really involved in the planning phase these days. And so when we have the planning phase set up, and what that planning phase is that what are you going to do to the property, right? What is everything you're literally going to do this project, whatever that might be, before you do anything. And so we found that if most house flippers, we take house flippers for ourselves, you buy a project and you jump right into it. You say, time is money. Clock's ticking. I got finance charges, all that kind of stuff. We got to get moving. Trash everything out. Let's start demoing. Get some contractors going. Let's get the roofer there. Let's get the plumber, and you start going, right? But that's how change orders happen. That's how all of a sudden you get held up. That's how all of a sudden maybe you don't have the plans right. Maybe you make decisions later like, oh man, maybe we should have knocked that wall down. We should put it here instead. Oh, wait. Didn't we have a vanity already? Who threw that out, right? So there's all this stuff starts to like contractors stepping on each other and change orders because you just let a GC just walk it. You didn't thoroughly go through it. Like you didn't really have a plan for it, and it delays the projects and costs way more money. So we found that if we just stop, don't even work on a project, we'll trash it out. That's different. And wait, I don't care if it takes us 3-4 weeks to plan out the house. We're not touching it until it's planned out. But as soon as it's planned, everything else is super fast and easy. So easy. I can't even explain it. Like way better. But most people don't trust me on that until they do it themselves. Then you got your rehab disposition. So we leverage technology. For those of you guys that are really into cool technology stuff, this is the stuff that we use or have used. Sorry, forgive me. These are the 3 things we use, right? We use Dropbox, Smartsheet, Asana, but we've used all these other things. So Google Drive, if I had to go back in time, I am so leveraged into Dropbox. It's not even funny. But if I had to go back in time, I would use Google Drive, right? And the only reason for that is that Google Drive has the Google Suite stuff. So you can add the Google Sheets, Docs, all that kind of stuff, and just have it integrated in. And it just would make things a little bit cleaner on our end for that. But we are way too heavy in Dropbox, and there's no way I could change out of it. Like, so we're in Dropbox. But if I had to go back time, Google Drive. Smartsheet is a overly steroided version of Excel, right? And if you open up Smartsheet, you will think I just wasted a ton of money on a Excel spreadsheet. And so, but it's not. It is an incredible project management tool. We use it for a lot of things, but the downside of the Smartsheet is you have to build it yourself, or you have to pay a bunch of money for somebody else to do it yourself. So don't mess around with that if you really want to, until you want to get heavy in it. But Asana is a project management software. We use it all the time. We use it for communication. Basecamp is very similar to Asana. We used Basecamp for years, many years, but there's just some tools on Asana that we liked better. So eventually you switched over, and we're fully integrated in Asana now. These are just VoIP calls. Podio we do use today for our CRM for our acquisition side with what we use, but we're not a heavy off-market acquisition like business with our own internal. We have like one person that runs that, but we use Podio for that. So get these things. They're super neat. So show you a quick thing on Google Drive, Dropbox. You can do this with either one. This is one of our processes. I told you guys about taking photos. So here's a really simple process. Dropbox for us is file storage. That's what it's for. If I have very few things that like set me off in my business, I'm usually just like super whatever, hang out, we all make mistakes, whatever, move on. And I don't have a whole lot of like things I am diehard on. I am super diehard on our Dropbox. The biggest pet peeve I have is that if I need a document for whatever reason, a closing statement, title, policy, right? I need to see a certain photo from a property that was taken 3 weeks ago, or we need an invoice from something. It's in Dropbox. And the day we need it, it's not in there because somebody saved it on their computer and they forgot to put it in Dropbox instead. That's my only pet peeve in our business. Like, it just pisses me off because a lot of times it's a time thing. We need it now. Put it in Dropbox, right? For any of you guys that have a phone, you can put it in Dropbox or Google Drive, anything you want at any time. It's super fast, super easy. Just have a small process. So backing up, this is simple. Every single property we have has these 4 folders in it: analysis, before purchase, rehab picks, and that's it. You can ignore this. This now goes in our analysis, but this is basically the project data sheet that we use. We now decided Serena didn't like that I kept having it out there, so she put in an analysis now. So it's an analysis folder. But this is what they all look like. You could have any project I got. It has these 5 folders and that's it. But if you open up any one of them, you go to rehab. So the point is this: create a template, right? Analysis folder for us is anything that has to do with analyzing the property before we purchase it, right? All that data should be in there. Before picks is what it is. It's all the photos of the property before we bought it. Purchase is any purchase docs, anything that's to do with purchasing. Rehab, which I'll show you in a second, is all the rehab docs, and the rehab picks are the weekly pictures we're taking of the project, right? That are stored in a file. We add one more folder later if it's a flip, which is just called, it's listing. And if it's a refinance, because of the BRRRR, it says refi. So that's the only other folder we add. This is the rehab folder: bids, invoices, permits, plans. And then these are the scopes. Rehab picks. These are the rehab picks, right? So you get them, we basically date them in a certain way. So we go, whatever the date the picture was taken, right? Whatever was happening at that date, this case, countertops were going in, and then who took the picture, right? And that was it. So 2/13, what day was that? This is 2/13. So if you go back, so 2/13/19, it was during paint. Nate took the photo, right? So if you look at that, this is the house and what it looked like on 2/13/19. All the photos are taken the same way. It's really easy. We take all the exterior photos first, and then we just go through the front door and start taking photos. This is one day, and Nate took 98 photos of that house that day, right? So there was a time period when you took photos with 35mm film. Yeah, that would suck if you're taking 98 photos. You would never do that, right? Or when you had your digital camera and you always had to upload them to your computer. It's on your cell phones now. It takes no issue whatsoever. You have unlimited memory, most of us. Just go in there, take 100 photos, and then click submit to Dropbox, and you're done, right? So that's what we do. Now, backing up. What did I say earlier? Why do we do this? Why do we take photos? And what is this point? The point is, if we go to this, do you see my name on any of these? Right? Because remember, think of yourself as the business owner. Yes, you might have to take photos if you're by yourself, and you should if you're by yourself, because I'll tell you why. Contractors, liability, whatever. There's a lot of reasons why you might want it one day. You might have a contractor say they did something when they didn't, and then you could go back in the photos and realize, oh no, that wasn't done because 2 months ago we have photos showing that it wasn't done. You have sheetrockers that cover up electrical outlets. Well, instead of having to cut all the sheetrock out to find the hidden electrical outlets, you can just go back to the photos before the sheetrock was up and say, oh, the electrical outlets are right there. There's a lot of reasons to have these photos that are just like simple things that you just like. And it takes you less than like 10 minutes to walk a property and take these photos. But the other part, what I just said, is that my name's not on these, right? And we have other team members now that do this too. But I can access these. As soon as Nate takes these photos, they upload the Dropbox, they're on my phone. So I was in Japan, like actually, when is this? February 2019. I think then we were in Vail. We were in Vail for 2 weeks in February in 2019. If I want, I'm not taking the photos. I'm in Vail. I can look at them in Dropbox, right? Now, if you guys are on BiggerPockets, or you guys have this group here, how many people would love to go drive an active project for you and take a ton of photos and learn, right? And do it for free. it's like a treasure trove of awesome up and coming investors out there on BiggerPockets in your guys' meetup group that would totally love to go drive your house for you and take 50, 60, 80 photos, right? Sorry, I'm beating a dead horse on this, but it's like, it's not as hard as you guys think. It's actually a lot of fun. And then you don't have to do it. So you just teach them how to do it. So that said, moving on. Property walk analysis. This is just a process. I'm going to go through this quick because I'd rather show you guys on Asana what it looks like. But this took from the checklist manifesto, and we broke down our property analysis phase, right? So this is how you simplify it. So we go, okay, well, we have some certain things that before we buy a property, we need to have done, right? We need to have done certain things. One, we need to set up Dropbox. We need to completely analyze the property. We have to have the purchase folder put together, open escrow, install a lockbox on the property, get our homeowner's insurance, and make sure we know when we're closing on the house, right? So, but the biggest thing was this one right here, complete the property analysis. So in order to do that, what do we need to, what's our process for property analysis? Now notice this is all written out, right? This is called a standard operating procedure, an SOP, right? So we actually have SOPs for each one of these tasks, right? And this takes time to do. This might be overwhelming, right, at times, but it takes time, right? It doesn't take as much time as you think though. How long would it take you to make this quick list to go, well, okay, I need to set up Dropbox. I need to open up escrow, get funding, have homeowner's insurance. And you just write that into an Excel file and you have a little list of 5 or 6 things you need to do before you close on a house. Done. Now you got your pre-property checklist before you close on a property, right? Just have it. Oh, I'm going to remember it. You'll never add people to your team, right? If you have it that way. This is our property analysis, right? We know that Nate, if you see Nate's assigned to that, he's in charge of it. He needs to take full before photos. This is the analysis super sheet, or the AS on the property, right? So that's Nate's idea of something fun. We take meter pictures, floor plan sketches, initial scope of work, analysis, red flags list. This is all the bad shit that can happen on property that we check out. But each one of those things, I'll show you in Asana what it looks like. But all those things are just geared towards, we have it written out, we have a process to analyze it, and it's somewhere, right? You could do that in Excel, you could do that on a Word doc, you could do that on a Google Sheet. Keep it simple for now, but as you develop your business, you can get more sophisticated with software, team members, but when you're on your own, you should be documented today. So planning phase, this is our most important phase for us. These are the things that we focus on when we plan. We need to get floor plans, design, obtain permits, cabinets, binders, final scopes of work, all that kind of stuff. We do a lot of this in-house now, but we used to outsource all of it, right? So floor plans, these are all the things. I guess Renee doesn't like that. So floor plans, these are all the things that have to get done on the floor plans for us. But I want you guys to see something here, right? To back up. This task here, these floor plans checklists, right? If you're the owner of the business, I care about these big things, the big rocks, right? I'm not making the floor plan. Somebody else is. Now you can hire it out. You can get an architect to design, an engineer, whatever. You can get interior designers to do that. You can get your general contractor to help you out. You can get realtors to help you out. There's a lot of people that you can get to help you out that would probably do it for free even to help you design the floor plans of a property, right? But in our team, Serena is ultimately in charge of that. But these are the things that have to be done in order to design a floor plan, right? The only thing that has my name on it is that I get to review what it looks like, right? So we have a process. Now, Serena's in charge of all this stuff, and other people are part of it as well. She has like kitchen companies and a bunch of other stuff that gets involved. But at the end of the day, we have a process for them to be able to do it. Same with final scope of work, right? This is the only thing I'm in charge of in the planning phase, which is to help make the scope of work and make sure it's done, right? I'm good at that. So I'm in charge of it for right now until we hire a project manager again. We fired our last one in 2017. So and there's a lot of reasons for that. But ultimately I had to take over the final scope of work. So we do that. So you can get overwhelmed on a lot of stuff. But when you get overwhelmed, stop asking how, right? That's a bad word. So how do I do this? How do I create a process? How do I scale? How do I do this? How do I buy more properties? How do I make more money? Those are the wrong questions to ask. And if you ask what and why, it's going to be a lot easier for you in this business, at least for me, particularly. What do I need to do to get to 10 projects? What do I need to do to scale to 100? What do I need to do to get cheaper financing, right? Who do I need to meet, right? Or whatever. And why the hell do you even want to do that? So if you have a good why for why you want to do a task, okay, what do I need to do to get cheaper financing? Okay, why do you want to get cheaper financing? Well, it'd be easier to whatever, like, or what do I need to do to get more funding, right? So these are all like questions and you figure out why. Cool. Motivation, what, figure it out. So at the end of the day, this is our processes. And I want to stop here in a second. Yep, I'm going back. So I want to show you guys. Yeah, I'm going to show you guys our Asana and what I mean by how that works. So it's our Asana. So this, you don't need to know Asana, but this is the point, right? The point is that over time, Asana did not build this. We had to build it ourselves. Asana is super cool. It's project management software. We use it all the time. So this is what we use this is our actual template for our rehab projects that we use. And each one of these is an SOP. So for instance, Nate's in charge of acquisitions. That's what he looks like, all studly and silly looking, right? For here, he's in charge of acquisition. So his only job, let me back up. The reason why we have this here is because there was a period of time in 2017 where we would buy a project and the rehab team would have no freaking clue we owned it for 2-3 weeks. So the acquisitions team would close the project, close the property. We'd be in a team meeting. 3 weeks later, I'd ask, what's going on with 123 Maple Street? Rehab team looks at me and goes, what the hell is 123 Maple Street? Right? These are real. This happened more than once. And it was because acquisitions never talked to rehab, right? Or acquisitions would be on point with everything they're supposed to do, and we would close, and nobody would tell rehab team, right? Why? Me. I was the bottleneck because I was the one that got the property funded, and I signed all the docs. And the acquisition team talked to me, and then rehab team talked to me. They never talked to each other, so they didn't need to, right? And I was the bottleneck. So we didn't have a process for that. So I had to get out of the way. So these are all things. You screw things up as you go. But we figured out, hey, if we just had one meeting where the rehab dude went over a bunch of stuff with the rehab people and said, we're buying a project. It's closing on this date. And here's the things that are really, really important. And they took our process, our property analysis folder that we created, and they transferred it over to the rehab team with all the beautiful documents that they're supposed to have lined up. Things moved. It moved quickly. It moved easier. We just had that one extra step, a meeting with a file transfer, and that was it. So I can get too much in the weeds on this, so forgive me if I'm doing that at any moment. But I'm just going because you guys can't talk to me for some reason. But anyways, so this is stuff. So post-purchase, planning phase, right? You guys saw some of this. Final scope of work, contractors, hire a GC. We have 10 steps to hire a GC, by the way, right? Which looks like this. So it's like bid request, property walk with the GC, get a review, final legal docs checklist, which we have all these docs that we have to have, W-9 license, insurance bond, comp waiver, all that stuff. Like just have a process for everything. Binder sent to the GC, schedule determined. Like that's to hire a general contractor, right? Most of us like handshake, we're good. Right? Yeah, until it's not. So then one day it won't be. And then you're happy you have these things, right? Are we perfect on all this? Hell no, we're not perfect on all this. We mess stuff up all the time, like I said. But we're really good at being moderately good at this. So do we do every single thing on this? No, we don't, right? Some things just move. They move too fast. Like they just go. You build relationships, you trust. But eventually you got to get back on track and you got to do your best. If we're doing our SOPs and our processes like 80% efficiency, that is really that's good. We're better. We're moving forward. We're still going to make some mistakes, but at least it's here that we can judge, that we can jump on. And the point of this too is it's scalable, right? We can sit there. I can run this project, all this stuff by myself, right? If I had to, I could just hire people, do whatever. I can hire a contractor to help me. I can hire an architect. I can do all that stuff. And I could follow my own process here on my own. Or I could assign people, right? Transfer utilities. That could be somebody else. I can get a VA to do that, right? I can trash out yard, like all this stuff. Somebody else can do that. But there's a process here for somebody else to duplicate. And does it take time? Yes, it takes a hell of a lot of time to do this. But is it worth it? Yes. Neil, I saw you shake your head. No, it's not. But it is worth it depending on what you want, right? And if you just want to do 1 or 2 properties at a time, yeah, you don't need to go as crazy as we've done it over the years. But if you actually want to be able to travel the world, do all that kind of stuff, have your business grow, still do 30, 40, 50 properties a year, right? And not be stressed out about it all the time, then yes, you do want to do that, right? And it's what I found, and just wrapping up on this, what I found just in my life is just more, I'd rather have more freedom, more time to hang out with the people I love and enjoy to be with, and profit less for me, which means I have more overhead, trusted people, pay people better, right? Have less stress, and things just move, right? And it's great, but we have a process for that. So, okay. I just did a big fire hose on a bunch of stuff, and sometimes I break down a few more things in a little bit more detail, but I'll talk to questions if you guys want. I'll just start BSing some more if you guys want to. So it's up to you.
Yeah, man, that was awesome. I thought it was a phenomenal presentation. I got a ton out of it. And I really like the fact that you used some insights as far as like breaking down the processes, because it's so easy to get caught up in all the movement of everything as opposed to just sitting down and saying, okay, what is the most necessary thing to get done right now? And I know they talk about in the Checklist Manifesto. That's a great book. I very, very much like that book. But yeah, does anyone, as far as have any questions that you feel like Tarl would
Tarl, I'll throw one out there for you. And I had 8 rehabs going at one time. That was the most I've ever had. And I was the bottleneck in so many different ways. And so I can totally relate. And I had some of the similar things where, somebody knocked down drywall on a wall that was not supposed to come down, all sorts of stuff happened. But the checklist thing and the Asana software is something that I could have benefited from immensely, because one of my projects in particular literally just sat there because that was the cheapest one, and it was the cheapest one to leave sit.
Totally, it happens for sure.
So with Asana, is that something that's like you created that process for yourself? And when I was watching it, I was really appreciative just that you shared all the details and everything, how it worked out. And you said it's really not that hard to come up with your list, but would you say it's similar? Your list is going to be very similar to anybody else's list who's wanting to do a similar thing as far as flipping?
Depends. Like yes on some things, because if you would have talked to me in 2014, 15, 16, we didn't have in-house as much stuff as we have in-house now that we can control. And that's because of a profitability reason. So like we sub out more than ever. We used to just hire a GC, do everything. I remember, I think it was end of 2015.
Right.
Like I installed some light bulbs in one of my properties and I was so pissed. Like I literally felt like I failed in my business because like I'm working on it. And it sounds retarded, right? I'm sorry, wrong word. Sorry guys, whatever. It sounds messed up, but it's just, I'm an investor. I'm not supposed to be working on this project. Why am I putting light bulbs in a project, right? We have, at that point, actually in 2015, we had 22 or 23 active projects at one point in 2015. So I don't have time to install light bulbs. And so when we could pay somebody else to do it, but we used to never pay for materials, like ever. And then I found myself in 2016, 2017, I personally was delivering like some materials and I'm like, how did this happen? And it's just, we don't do any of that anymore, but we went to the extreme on the other side. So depending on where you are in your business, like if we sub out our plumber, we sub out our electrician, our roofer, our window people, we sub all that out because GCs have gotten so expensive here. Right. And we just added it to our process to do it. So if you don't do that, some of these things, we create our own floor plans, we create our own scope of works, right? In our own software through smart sheets and all this kind of stuff. So some of those won't be transferable to other people, right?
Right.
But what would is like, if you have, what I would encourage anybody to do is think about the big rocks, right? Acquisitions. What do you do for acquisitions? Well, let's start something simple. What's your criteria to buy, right? What is your criteria? What is your preferred criteria to say, how do you say yes and how do you say no to a property, right? And preferably, like, what are all the no's? Like I know my no's better than my yeses. So how do you get a property in your lap and how quickly can you say no to it? That's pretty much the idea here. So what is that process? Write that out, right? And what is that criteria? Start with that. Very simple. I buy 15% plus cash on cash investments in King and Pierce County, right? Right now I prefer 20%, but I'll buy 15 if the rehab is less than $125,000 in a project and we don't have to do any additions or any pop tops, right? And it has to be fun. So those are my criteria. Outside of that, it's all no. So for currently right now, and then, but figure that out for you. And then do the same thing with like, okay, well, what do I need to get ready before I close on a property? All right, I need to talk to escrow. I need to have my operating agreement sent to them or whatever. Like I need to get funding. right? And just write out the big rocks for that, right? It's like, cool, I have a little process now and I just need to make sure I check it. So, and then maybe somebody else can take over utilities for you or your insurance, making sure that's done. Like there's little things. You can do that for each thing, right?
Right.
Just big things first. So that you don't, milestones, I guess, is what I would call it. Then you can get in the minutia of every little fucking thing at that point and continue to go forward, right? Like we eventually you then get what we get when you start going into the details too far, and you could go way too far, which you've done too. But
Gotcha.
Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. And the one other question I have for you, I know you're trying to burr a lot more houses now.
Yeah.
But financing long term is one thing that I guess I've run into issues with, just with as many mortgages as I have and all the rest of it. So going to smaller banks and that sort of thing, but commercial lending on single family houses. And I don't know, I thought you said you were holding like single families and maybe some multis. Is that kind of what you're holding?
Yeah, so it's almost all single family. Our biggest multifamily is like a triplex, so it's something that like we're wanting to get into more. We're starting to 1031 exchange for like. Okay. By the way, the first time we ever 1031 exchanged was last year, and it was the first time I felt like a real investor, like legitimately. I mean, I read it in Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was 17, and it took me 17 years from reading that book to finally do a 1031 exchange, and I'm like, oh, I'm a real boy. So,
hell yeah. That's awesome. But as far as for long-term financing, are you talking to local banks and getting commercial loans on 20-year AMs, or have you found people that'll do like 30-year AMs, or how are you doing that?
Yeah. So there's pre-COVID, you throw a rock, you hit 26 lenders, right? And they had all sorts of different funding availabilities. There's a lot of institutional lenders that were out there that are different than portfolio lenders, and then different from conventional lenders. And so it's just, so basically you had institutional lenders would be like your hard money lender also lent on long-term funding, right? So there are a lot of those. Now you might have a higher rate, you might have been paying 5 or 6%, but there's plenty of institutional lenders that are hard money lenders that were doing like a 5.75 or a 5.5 for a 30-year fixed. Right?
That's what I'm, because the 30-year fix is kind of what I'm trying to keep as much as I can just for cash flow. Totally.
And so or it's amortized at 30 years, but maybe there's a payout at 15 or 20 or whatever.
Of course.
Right? So, but your local credit unions are, so if you had an order for, you go get conventional, which is your FHA, sorry, not FHA, but conventional mortgage, your Fannie Freddie mortgage that you can get, and you do that as much as you can right in the beginning, which that caps you out, right? And actually Fannie Freddie has rules on nowadays on your LLC, plus also how many loans you can have before you cash out. So you can have 10 on your credit report, but you cannot cash out 10.
No. Yeah.
So they have blocks at 6 and 4, right? So the Fannie's 4, the Freddie's 6, but you can have, that's for cash out refinances. So if your strategy is BRRRR and you already got 5 underneath your belt, well, Fannie's not talking to you, and Freddie's the only one left. And if you put that property in your LLC, they have to season it for 6 months in your personal name before they'll cash out. So
really? Okay, I did not know that.
So they changed that. Freddie's sucks right now. So anyways, that's the point. But Fannie doesn't care as much, but you only have 4 to cash out. So, but you can do as many rate term refinances as you want, up to 10. And rate term is you just don't take cash out.
Yeah, I was thinking, I guess you need like a private lender that'll put a mortgage on it temporarily for you. Dude.
Well, you can do that. So one of our strategies, so going back to your original question local credit unions, right, are going to be your next best bet. And locals, I mean, most credit unions can, as long as it's in the state, they can lend on it probably. And so it doesn't have to be like in Louisville. There's plenty of credit unions like there's an area called there's Vancouver, Canada, and there's Vancouver, Washington, right? Vancouver, Washington is right next to Portland, down south of here. So there's a credit union there called Red Canoe that they're based out of Vancouver, right? But they're not in Seattle. And nobody knew about them in Seattle for a long time, but they did loans for people up in Seattle all the time, right? And now they have some like branches here, but they do a great commercial loan, for instance. Right. But you wouldn't have known about them unless you talked to other investors, because you're not going to see them driving around the Seattle area because they don't have branches, right? So is there any other credit unions besides the 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 that you see? Like, just how many are in the Washington? In Kentucky state, right?
I mean, there's quite a few, but I know several investors, the savvy ones, are talking to ones that you don't see any offices in Louisville. So
correct. So you just got to, who are they? And then you talk to your investors. Who are they? And they all have their own process for those. So those are your next best bet, is your credit unions. And
Right.
depending on them, they might only have a 25-year arm. I mean, sorry, a 25-year amortized loan,
Right.
or they have a 30-year.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
25 years popular, which sucks because then it like have a higher payment, but it's popular. But there's 30 years out there, and or you have to go find an institutional lender that still does the 30, but then you're going to pay a higher interest rate. So
Right.
for those of you guys listening, rate equals risk. So it depends on so you have a longer term. So a 25 versus a 30-year term means the lender has a longer exposure with you, which means you're going to have a higher interest rate. So because their risk is higher, that's traditionally kind of how that works. You get a 10 or 15 year with them, they can have a lower interest rate because they have lower exposure with you. So it's like same thing with your credit report, your debt service ratio. Those are all factors, your loan to value, right? Those are your income. Those are all things that measure risk on you to determine whether or not you're risky to the investor, which then determines you're at the bank, which then determines your interest rate technically, right? So it's, but each bank is going to have their own criteria. And for credit unions, debt service ratio is their biggest one, which is your ability to service the debt with the rent. So that's on the property. Your income doesn't matter to most of them. They just want to know you actually have somewhat of a business. And then they look at the property. And that's the thing that can mess it up. Like it happens to us here in the Seattle market where we have a high appraised value for a property, but the rents aren't high enough to have a high enough debt service ratio to max out the LTV for cash out. So even though we might have a property that's worth 700 grand appraised or 800 grand appraised, the debt service ratio might only allow a maximum loan of like 400,000, right? With a credit union, or 450 or 550, because maybe the rent's only like 2,800 bucks or $3,000, right? So the mortgage payment's not going to, the mortgage payment isn't a ratio enough of the rent. So they have to lower that, even though you can get 80% LTV, right? So you have to watch that stuff out, right? Which is not always a bad thing, because I think debt service ratio is one of the best things to save your ass if the market crashes. So way more than LTV. So in my opinion, but because that's cash flow, negative cash flow or otherwise.
Right.
I might have spent too long answering your question. So.
No, totally, man. I appreciate all the info. It's all great stuff. So,
but shop around, honestly.
Yeah.
You don't have any loyalty to one lender. Like,
right.
There's tons of them. And so right now there's still, even though with COVID, there was a period of time in March and April where like you couldn't find a lender. Like they were all like,
Yeah.
But a lot of them have come back up and a lot of them are out in full force again. So, and the reason for that was because there was no secondary market for those institutional lenders to be able to lend, to be able to sell their notes. Right. There's massive nationwide hard money companies that went out of business in one day, because Blackstone, which was the largest buyer of notes for most of those companies, just said, we're not buying anymore. And they're like, I got $1 billion of loans we just closed and you buy them at, case in point, Lending Home and other businesses like that. Right. It just went boom, bust. Right. And so and that happened to a lot of them overnight. So, but a lot of them are squirreling back up again and you'll be able to find them.
Cool.
So I guess I have one question. So as someone who's relatively new, I mean, I've never done a flip before. I have a fourplex that I'm house hacking right now, and I'm in a commercial real estate space right now. But if I wanted to get into flipping houses, for example, and I wanted to scale, do you recommend as I'm going through the flip, just document everything that I'm doing, and then I'm sorry?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, and then just kind of go from there, and then okay, I see what you're saying.
I mean, it's yes and no. I mean, some stuff's a waste of time, but yeah, I made a phone call to the utility company, right?
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is really just organize it in a way that makes sense, so that as you start doing more and more flips, you can optimize that going forward.
Yeah, and this is anything, whether it's multifamily or otherwise. Like our process, the reason why we do BRRRR, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat, is that it's no different than a flip. The only different at the end of it is that instead of selling it, we refinance it with a tenant. That's the only difference. So it's a very easy process for me to step over to BRRRRs, right, and do really well at them, just because we screwed up all the flips. We just got to make sure they cash flow and we can get most of our money out. So we're good. But but even if it's multifamily or it's commercial, there's a process there too. So it's probably very similar, except that you maybe have more property management heavy stuff, tenant negotiation, whatever it might be, TIs if it's commercial, and you might have some other processes, but they're probably similar, where you have an acquisition portion of it and a pre-purchase, and you have a planning portion of it for whatever you got to do, or an operations section of it, and you got a large multifamily property that's 50% occupancy. right? Your planning phase is like, what are you going to do for your operations, your property manager, like all that kind of stuff. And then how do you start turning these properties individually or units individually while maintaining the current tenants and evicting the bad ones? Like, so that's all part of your planning, right? So, and your numbers as well. So but the same big chunks, right? You just have different steps inside. So, yeah.
And those little tasks, what I've found is a lot of those little tasks, making the phone calls to the utility companies and paying the bills and all the rest of it. Those little tasks add up, and when you can only have so many thoughts in a day, and it just your brain just goes.
Yeah, it's task switching too. So it's like, it's a real thing, like to sit there, and having to, for me, rehab. I hate rehab. I never thought that I know as much about construction as I do today that I ever would have thought about when I got started like full-time in real estate investing in 2012. I never ever wanted to know anything about construction rehab for years, and I didn't. I had somebody else, I had a business partner that did for the first couple of years. And but when I have to shift task from like doing whatever I'm doing over here with numbers or team members to I got to go deal with a contractor or go look at the scope of work, it's a big shift. Like it takes, and then all of a sudden somebody pulls me over here for something else. I'm like, oh, cool. Then that's an easy shift, right? And then to get it back again, like if it's happening too many times, all of a sudden, like you're a bottleneck again in the process, or you're burnt out, or you're not getting anything done effectively. So I think that's where, for schedule management, that's where time blocking comes in really, really well. Or I can't remember the actual technical term. I think it's called like the Pomodoro or something. I can't remember, but basically it's where you set like a timer. And this has changed my business life for task effectiveness, which is where I'll do a 20 to 40 minute timer on one task. And that means like that is the only thing I'm doing. And I'll literally set the timer on my phone. And I won't do anything else. And if I'm not done with the task at the end of the 20 minutes or 30 minutes or 40 minutes, and I don't have time to finish it, then I stop it and I pick it up again the next day or a day later, right? A lot of us are professional procrastinators, and which, I was that way in school all the time. And we're like, oh, if I can't get it all done right now, I'm not going to even start it, right? So it is tremendously better, even if you're just doing 20 minutes of it, so that when you pick it back up the next day, it's fresh. You just like move on with it even faster. And I'm surprised how much more you can get done when you do that. So, and then you take a break. You take a 5-minute break, 2-minute break, play with your phone, tweet, whatever you do, and then go back at it again with another task or the same task. So, but you do it in increments. So
it's awesome.
Anybody else have any other questions out there? I know that
people are able to unmute themselves.
Yeah, go ahead and unmute yourself, ask a question, type it in, whatever you want.
I know somebody's like yelling in the phone right now, like, I've got a question.
We definitely got to check out this Zoom room thing. I'd be excited.
It's called breakouts. So if you go to your Zoom, and just go to your account settings, you can enable your own your breakout rooms.
Yeah,
we'll have to test it. Luke and I'll get a crew together.
I can do it right now. Like I can all go to separate rooms. I click on it. So, everybody's go. The way right now it says there's 22 of us. I put each of us in our own room right now, so you can be by yourself with like click of a button.
So we'll test it offline for sure. But I'm definitely interested in doing it because I mean it's kind of cool to get in a smaller room as opposed to just being in a large group setting and not really having that opportunity to network like we used to do at the Manhattan Project. I mean, it was really cool when we could do that. But if we can incorporate that online, I'm sorry.
Do it for 10 minutes or whatever, right? Increments, and then people get more effective. And there's less. What I found with the networking virtually is there's less idle chat, right? It's just like, let's talk about what we're here to talk about, kind of thing.
Right.
And but the downside is it's hard there's 23 of us in this room right now. There's one conversation, right?
Right.
So you have to break them up. And if all of us were out to dinner together, there'd be 24 conversations going on. So, and
yeah.
Let's see.
Cool. Well, go check out pnwrealestateexpo.com. Join us virtually.
Hell yeah, man. Awesome, man. Thanks so much for coming on, man. Seriously. Great info. So
yeah, we've gotten great responses in the chat box, and really thanks again, Tarl, for coming by. And I'm definitely going to check out the conference. I'm intrigued to see what you guys have to talk about, and hopefully I can learn some information about what you guys do as far as the Expo is concerned, because that'd be kind of cool to do something on this side of the United States to be able to kind of do that. So
yeah, it's weird from running it in person to virtual, because in person, if you say you start at noon and you start at like 12:05, nobody's really pissed off, right? 12:10 you're pissed off, right? But 12:05 you're not pissed off. You do a virtual show up for the webinar, it's 12:01, people are pissed, right? Because you're sitting there by yourself. So it becomes a TV production, and it's on a larger scale for virtual events versus in person. So they both have their own pluses and minuses, but it's different, we're finding. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah.
So anyways, good times. Yeah, I hope you guys join us and get tickets if you need them. And then yeah,
definitely. Well, thanks again, Tarl, for everything, and thanks again for everyone who showed up, and thanks to everyone on Facebook that's tuned in right now. And again, we'll see you guys soon.
thanks everybody.
All right.
Thanks, Tarl. See you.
Bye.
See you guys.